Hello and welcome to SHRP Talk, the show by washed-up athletes for washed-up athletes looking to be their best self. On today's episode, I get into my personal training split. I start with kind of my overall philosophy and training goals, and then break it down, kind of zooming in more narrow as we go, going to what a typical phase looks like, how I progress week to week, what a typical week looks like, alternating upper and lower body days, as well as what the actual workouts themselves look like and the exercises within those workouts. So kind of start more zoomed out and get more detailed as we go and get into the why behind why I like to train how I do and get to how it's changed over time. And my goal with this was just hoping to help other people be intentional and see the purpose behind not only why I train, but why they train, and just give a new perspective from the way one guy likes to train since his time as an athlete has been done. So hoping you gain something from this, just an insight and if nothing else into the way that I train, why I do what I do, but hoping you can take something from it as well and apply it into your own training and how you approach your workouts on a daily basis. So thanks for tuning in and hopefully you enjoy. Before we get rolling with today's episode, I want to take a minute to tell you about SHRP Training. Snyder Health, Recovery, and Performance Training is designed for former athletes to improve their physical, mental, and spiritual health. For only $12 a month, you can choose a training plan that is catered to your needs, interests, and goals, with new programs delivered each month through the TeamBuilder app. You'll also receive 24/7 messaging and feedback from coaches, access to an exclusive Discord to continually learn and be encouraged by others, a 20% discount on Thorne supplements, and access to the SHRP Edge, the ultimate guide to upgrading your diet, sleep, and life. Iron sharpens iron, so let us help you become your sharpest self. Now let's go. And we're back with another edition of SHRP Talk, another solo edition that is on this fine Saturday. Just wrapped up a fantastic lower body workout to kick off the weekend. Some plyos, some sprints, split jerks, zercher squats, all sorts of fun stuff. Just punishing the legs to start the day. So good vibes to kick off the weekend. Maybe not everyone likes to kick off their Saturday like that, but if you're a sicko like me, shout out to you. But it's just a little transition to what we're getting into today. So just doing a little deep dive into my current training split and training philosophy, what kind of my overall goals are, what each day looks like, how it changes over time, and how it has changed since I've wrapped up my athletic career and have been training on my own. So getting to the nitty gritty, you might think of a psycho by the end of it, but I spend a lot of time thinking about this and working out every day. So pretty invested. So just hoping through this, not hoping to, completely overhaul the way anyone thinks about their programming or, telling you this is the perfect way to train. This is the perfect method, can't be beat. That's not my intention with this. This is just the way one person likes to train who enjoys it and has seen good results with it, and who's very invested in it. So just hoping through this to, maybe open up your eyes to maybe a few exercises, maybe a way to structure your workouts, way to progress it week to week, maybe some goals to approach your training with. Just kind of want to open your eyes into thinking about why you're training the way you're training and how you can change it up. Because I think one of the worst things you can do is just rinse and repeat the same old programs week after week, or even worse, not even knowing why you're doing what you're doing. Just maybe taking something from a old high school program or something you took all online or off the internet and just repeating it every single session or every single week. So just hoping to, open your eyes to being more intentional with your training and just how one guy likes to set it up. So just hoping you can take something with that. There's not like a one size fits all program. Everyone's goals are different. Everyone likes to train differently. Everyone likes, has different movements that fit them better. So there's not a one size fits all. There's not a one perfect program. It's basically just finding something that fits you, the way you like to train, what your goals are, and it's going to change over time. Like since I've wrapped up my college career, the way I structure and approach my programming, my workouts has changed, constantly. And so just hoping it inspires your process, your programming a little bit so that you can be, your best self and find some enjoyment in training as well as some good results as well. Again, compared to the average individual, I'm a little more invested in this and spend a little bit more time thinking about it, just for a lot of reasons. I mean, I started, programming for myself in high school as just a young kid trying to figure it out and just trial and error through that. And then, getting into exercise science in college and studying more of the human body and, why we train the way we do and, the actual physiological effects that are taking place. And then going through a college strength and conditioning program to then coaching at the college level at different places. I've just, the weight room and training in general has been a big part of my life and something I, spend hours on every day, whether that's training myself or thinking about it or coaching. So it's just something that I've spent a lot of time thinking on and just kind of, more obsessed with it, more passionate about it than the average individual. And so just obsessed about figuring out what works, not only for me, but for others, figuring out what works and what keeps it fun, what keeps me coming back and keeps me growing and seeing results over time. So we'll kind of start more zoomed out, get into like the overall goals and then zoom into what, the progression is week to week and even to what a typical day looks like and even the exercises within those days. So start out and zoom in. So I think with anything, you should start with the why of it, the goals you have. I think of like programming as a strength coach, it's always about working backward from the sport. So if I'm working with a basketball player, okay, I know what it takes to be great on the court physically or just a good overall player. Now, how can I work backward and see the demand to that sport, the work to rest intervals, the common injuries in that sport, the qualities that make basketball players great? How can I work backward and structure my training to fit that, not only from a macro view, from week to week, month to month, but even down to each individual day and each individual exercise, just having a purpose for everything rather than just going through the motions. And so that applies to me as well. I have goals with where I'm currently at, and my training is geared towards that. And so one, if I don't have a goal, then I don't have anything that I'm training forward, and I'm just showing up and going through the motions, which, isn't the worst thing in the world if, you're able to continue exercising without, enjoying it or having a purpose. It's better than not exercising at all. But I think with anything, it's great to be intentional and have a why behind it and be working towards something. And that doesn't have to be a race or event or sport. It can just be more general things and general whys. But I think it's important to have that picked out ahead of time so that you have a purpose when you show up every day or when the alarm goes off in the morning, just as a way to get you there and be intentional about it. So a few of my goals for me, number one, above all else, in this stage of life is just keeping it fun and sustainable. Working out, training has been one of my favorite things to do for a long time. And my hope is to keep it that way, to always, just looking forward to starting my day with a workout through the rest of my life, however long that is. Just keeping that fun, keeping that enjoyment, keeping that exploration, just so that I can, practice this healthy habit for life and enjoy this healthy habit for life. There's been very few days that I've not wanted to work out in my life, which I'm pretty blessed to say, because I know that's not true for everyone. And part of that's just the way that I'm wired, but part of that's, which we'll get into, is the way that I structure my workouts. I keep it engaging and fun and explorative. So for me, that kind of comes down to like just a few ways that I structure my workouts. So doing like, from more of a macro view, just doing a phase or a movement for 4 weeks, just progressing it, getting good at it, and then cycling in something new just to keep it fresh, keep it exciting, and finding a new challenge every month or so. So with my programming, that's what I like to do. I like to rock with a program for 4 weeks and then swap in some new exercises, new qualities, just a way to keep it fresh. And I think 4 weeks is kind of a good blend, good mix in the middle. It's enough time to get adaptation and get good at a movement, but not enough to burn out of it and get really sick of it. I've found 4 weeks to be a good time frame, and that might look different for other people. Some people maybe just go 1 or 2 weeks and they want to do something new, or just show up and do something new every time. Or maybe it's, maybe if people can go and rock the same program for 10 straight weeks before getting sick of it. So that'll look different for everyone. But for me, I think 4 weeks is a good time frame. Just rotating movements and just keeping it enjoyable by exploring and doing stuff that I like to do. It might not lead to the best results and make me, the peak male specimen, if you will. But it's just fun to do, fun to show up and just try new things and push myself every day. So that's the ultimate goal, is just keeping it fun, keeping it sustainable so that I can enjoy it for life and enjoy the benefits of it for life. As far as qualities, just being a jack of all trades and not being really good at one specific thing. So I want to be strong, but also be mobile and somewhat fast and somewhat explosive, have some muscle size, have some endurance. Just having all of these qualities rather than being really good at one specific thing. If I devote 80% of my time to just being as strong as possible, then that leaves 20% to focus on those other qualities, and those are going to be diminished as a result. So maybe I'm super strong, but not as mobile as I would like, not as fast or as explosive, just because, again, you can only spend your time, so much time on certain qualities. You can't be the best of the best at every single thing. So for me, I'd rather not be good at one specific thing, but just be solid at a lot of different things, being somewhat strong, being somewhat mobile, all that good stuff. Just focusing on all those qualities at the same time, just so that, I feel like I can do anything that's asked of me, whether that's in training or in life. If I have to lift something heavy or go to an extreme range of motion, or, bend at a really weird angle, hit a golf ball far, move furniture. I mean, whatever it is, I just want to be able to be prepared for it. And so just focusing on, being really good at a bunch of qualities. Third goal, just not having any chinks in the armor, not having any weaknesses. Similarly, how I want to be a jack of all trades, I also, just in my physical body, just want to have balance through everything, in terms of muscle groups, and not having any weaknesses throughout the change, because when there's weaknesses in one area, then another area has to compensate, and that's when injuries happen and stuff just gets thrown out of whack. And so for me, I want to have balance in everything, and that's not only upper and lower body, or maybe you think of like a push and pull, but I apply that to like everything I do. So I try to, for the shoulder, for example, for every abduction, I also want to do adduction, bringing it down to my side. Or for every flexion movement, I want to do an extension movement. Every internal rotation, I want to do an external rotation. So just balance with everything, not favoring one type of movement or one muscle action over the other, and also just attacking each joint of the body, each joint action. Again, that leaves me doing more exercises than the average individual, because I'm not only doing your multi-joint movements, your bench, your squat, pull-ups, all that good stuff, but also attacking each joint and making sure that each little muscle group is also being targeted and worked as well, so that there's not any chinks in the armor. There's not any place that's overcompensating. So just attacking each joint of the body and making sure the body itself is well-rounded and balanced. And then finally, just want to be able to train, 6 to 7 days a week. And so for me, like, one of the best ways to start my day is by working out. And so why not do that as often as I can? I feel like that just leads to better days and overall higher quality of life for me. So just structuring my training in a way that allows me to recover well enough and adapt well enough that I can train consistently every day if I want to. just being smart with like volume management, not overdoing it on a given day, and also with the intensity, like the weights, overdoing that. And so for me, we'll get into more of the nitty gritty on that, but it's alternating upper and lower body, and then occasionally working on a rest day, but basically just giving those muscle groups of the upper and lower body day 48 hours to recover, and then just really focusing well on stuff outside of training as well with, nutrition, sleep, all that good stuff, but also controlling it within training by just being really conscious of the volume, the intensity of the movements I'm doing, and just trying not to overdoing it, just progressing it week to week and being really smart with that, which has come with a lot of trial and error, because there's definitely been times where I have overdone it, which has led to injury or just not getting results just because the body's worn down. But you also don't want to underdo it as well, because then, if you're underdoing it all the time, then there's no overload. You're defying the basic principle of strength training, the overload principle, where you have to stress the stimulus above what it's currently capable of to see progress. So just finding ways to overload the body, just the right amount, the right dosage each way. And there's different ways you can do that, which I'll get into, but just allowing my body to recover well while also being able to train consistently. So that's kind of the overall goals. Now zooming into kind of the training split, the quality for each day. So like I said, alternating upper and lower body days. For me, I have an 8-day training split, which might sound psychotic, and it kind of is. But for me, like I said, I'm targeting like each muscle action of the body, each joint action, which leads to a lot of exercises, and fitting that into, maybe 3 upper body and 3 lower body days, like would be more normal, like a 6-day training split, just doesn't fit as well. And so I found 8-day training split just works well for me, 4 upper, 4 lower, just alternating and then rolling with that for 4 weeks, which leads to 32 total workouts in that phase before, cycling in new movements. And so just devoting 4 weeks to each of those days, getting really good at those movements within that day, and then moving on and finding something else. And again, that just allows me to, nothing wrong with total body days, but for me, at any time where you're training back-to-back days, I prefer to go upper lower. Total body, great for 3 days a week or less, just because you can make sure you have 48 hours to recover for sure, regardless of how you split it up, unless you're going back-to-back days within that, which I don't know what you're doing. But just being able to alternate and just give the body those muscle groups plenty of time to recover. And so I'll alternate that. So that'll take roughly a month. And this current phase of life, I don't train every day. Like Sunday with the fasting day, I'll devote that to less of a training day and more of a cardio day. So like zone 2, steady state, 130, 135 beats per minute on the elliptical for an hour, just taking that day to get good at that quality, more endurance based. And then, alternating upper lower those other 6 days of the week. And so, it'll take a month to a month and a half to get through a phase, and then move on to the next phase with some different movements. So it's kind of and each of those days within each of those 8 days has a different quality. And so I have a upper lower pair together, upper lower pair together, upper lower, upper lower. So basically 4 different types of training days, kind of paired together with those upper and lower. So those 4 different qualities that I'm focusing on. So one is like high intensity strength. So that's your 80 to 100% even of your 1 rep max. So low reps, like 1 to 5 reps, and just heavier weights, targeting more of the central nervous system. So which is really high outputs rather than the muscle itself. And so high intensity strength day, heavy weights, low reps, and then the next pairing will be a high volume strength day. So that'll be more like 70 to 85%, not as heavy as the high intensity day, but little higher reps, and that'll target more of the muscle structure itself. Some hypertrophy, muscle growth involved, but still more of mostly a strength emphasis. And so 2 kind of strength focused days, 1 lower volume, 1 higher volume. And then I'll have a speed and power day. The weights for those will be anywhere from like 20 to 80%. For those, I'll actually start heavier and work lighter and focus on getting faster and faster as we go. And so like those first 2 weeks of that 4-week phase will be strength speed, which is 50 to 80% roughly of a 1RM. Kind of, again, all these percentages for me are kind of feeling it out after doing it for a long enough time, but that's kind of how I like to think about it. So strength speed for those first 2 weeks, moving heavier weights, still kind of fast, but like controlling the movement down and then being explosive. Whereas those last 2 weeks are purely speed. It's 20 to 50% of a 1-rep max, contracting, relaxing as fast as possible, just completing each rep as fast as you possibly can. Just surfing the force velocity curve, if you're familiar with that. If you're not, look it up. But basically just working on all different speeds, all different loads within that day, and just moving as fast as possible. Just getting that muscle to contract and relax. And then that 4th quality, that final pairing will be more of like a endurance, hypertrophy, work capacity day. So higher volume, higher reps. So percentage for there will be anywhere from like 50 to 75%. High reps, anywhere from 8 to 20 reps, or maybe like time sets. Just overall higher output, just working on the endurance of the muscle, work capacity, the actual muscle size, which comes from higher reps and taking it closer to failure with those higher reps. So again, just pairing those qualities. So like for a given 8-week phase, like for this phase, it would be day 1 and day 2, upper lower would be high intensity strength. Day 3 and 4, upper lower would be high volume strength. Day 5 and 6, upper lower, speed and power. And then 7 and 8, endurance and capacity, upper lower, alternating those. And so that also helps the body to recover. I found, if I was doing 80 to 100% every single day throughout that, 8-week phase, I feel like that would get a little tough on the body and also get a little stale. So just working on all those qualities at the same time helps with recovery, but also just getting good at each of those qualities. Some coaches will go with more of like a linear model, which would be focusing on one quality for 4 weeks. So going from hypertrophy work capacity for 4 weeks to a strength phase for 4 weeks to a speed phase for 4 weeks, kind of stacking it on top of one another in a certain order, which certainly works. But I mean, beyond athletics, it's just not that serious. And so I found it funner to just keep those, having an emphasis for each day and just keeping it fresh that way. And you can still certainly see good results with that, with just focusing on all those qualities at the same time. And those qualities apply to that whole workout for that day. So from the plyos to the strength work to the mobility to whatever it is, like they're all following that quality. So I have a specific intent to follow for that day. And so it just helps you to be really intentional with each exercise each day rather than just, completing each rep. It's how am I completing this rep, or how am I loading this, rather than just going through the motions. So just being really intentional with that. Getting more into those upper and lower body days themselves. The upper body day, start with like a 10-minute warm-up. On these days, I like to use some sort of implement, whether it's a PVC pipe, med ball, band, whatever it is. Just grab something and just exploring with it, just because the warm-up doesn't need to be as serious as a lower body day if there's like sprinting and plyos going on. It's just kind of getting the body warm and just exploring and moving that implement, that object in as many different ways as I can, and just getting the brain firing a little bit, waking up a little bit just by exploring and keeping it fun. and just getting ready for the workout. And then I'll take that into 20 minutes of cardio. So for me, that's mostly an elliptical. If I don't have an elliptical, it'll be like a like a wind bike or something like that. Just something where I can go 20 minutes of harder cardio. And for me, I like to alternate between. I'll do in that. So I have 4 upper body days in a phase. 2 of those will be aerobic, so targeting more of like the cardiovascular system, the heart, the lungs, oxygen delivery, and that's more like steady state, kind of staying at, a certain heart rate, lower heart rate threshold, and less intensity, and more so just maintaining throughout that period. Whereas the anaerobic targets more so the endurance of the muscle itself, and it's more like high intensity interval training in a sense, where it's lower work time, really high intensity, but longer rest time, just to allow you to keep those outputs high. So focusing on each of those qualities, both aerobic and anaerobic endurance, and just breaking that up. And so that's how I like to break it up in the elliptical, keeping it fresh with that. So different intervals, progressing in some way, whether that's resistance, work time, decreased rest time. Sometimes I'll base the rest on specific amount of time or heart rate, so I can increase the heart rate each week. So just finding fun ways to progress that and gamify that as well keeps it enjoyable for me, rather than just doing the same, intervals or steady state every time. So being intentional with that, even if cardio isn't the most fun thing in the world, especially for me, I found it to be enjoyable and just a good way to kick off the upper body day, and just a good way to consistently work in cardio, 3 to 4 times a week, whatever it is. And so I've seen a lot of benefit from that. I've been doing that for, only like a year or 2, but I've seen a lot of growth from consistently working that in. So for me, it's the elliptical. For you, it could look like, whatever it is. Maybe you need to change it up often, or maybe it's a rower, or jump rope, or running, whatever it is. For me, I just like that it's low impact, and I can get the heart rate elevated pretty easily with that, just by increasing the resistance or incline with that. So that's how I like to kick off the upper body day. And then into that first block, I'll start with like a bilateral strength movement. So your bench press, pull up, overhead press, whatever it is. So something with both arms. And then I'll always pair a bilateral plyo with that as well. So if it's a bench press, I might do something, work like the same muscle group. So like a push-up plyo or a med ball throw, or if it's a pull-up, some sort of overhead med ball throw or toss or something like that. So just a good pairing to, again, not only work on strength, but explosiveness with that as well. And then with that third movement in the first block, I'll also do lower body mobility. So whether it's ankle mobility, hamstring, hips, just for each upper body day, just picking a specific lower body muscle group and just working on the mobility for that. And then block 2, I'll get into a unilateral strength movement. So something opposite of that first block. So if I did a both arm bench press, block 1, it might be a single arm lat pull down. Or if I did block 1, maybe I did a barbell overhead press. Block 2 might be a single arm dumbbell row. And so single arm movement, and then also a single arm plyo with that. Again, just doing similar muscle groups. So if it's a horizontal push, a single arm dumbbell bench press, might do a rotational single arm med ball throw, and just, again, keeping those qualities intertwined and using that strength work to be more dynamic with that plyometric. And then I'll usually do a third movement, that something single joint, maybe a shoulder movement, forearm, wrist, whatever it is, nothing too crazy. And then I'll get into, from the rest of the workout, would be more accessory work. That first movement of the third block might be kind of an in-between of like a multi-joint primary movement and like your single joint movements. So could be a bicep or tricep, working those bigger muscle groups, or maybe a horizontal flexion like a dumbbell chest fly, or a reverse fly, hitting the bigger back muscles. So kind of an in between there, and then it'll be all single joint work from there, whether that's shoulder, whether that's maybe forearm, whatever it is, just working those in. And then upper body days are also where I'll focus on core work as well. I'll do 2 to 3 different core exercises, and just like with everything else, also want to have balance with that. So for every flexion movement I do, I also want to have an extension movement. Every rotation I do, I want to have an anti-rotation. Lateral flexion, like a side bend, I also want to have a lateral anti-flexion, like a side plank. So just having balance with that, and also including things like the neck. Like I said, I don't want to have any chinks in the armor, and most people don't do any neck work, but it's a pretty major part of the body, and leads to a lot of issues for most people. And so I make sure I don't neglect that as well, and include some work on the neck at least once a week with that. And so that's kind of the upper body day. Getting into the lower body day, the warm up for this, I won't use an implement. It might be a little bit longer, but this I'll still explore and have fun with it, but it'll be more so just my body weight. So I'll maybe start on, some sort of like, it could be a jump rope or just pogo hocks, jumping jacks, or just something to get the blood flowing a little bit, get the muscles warm. And then some days I'll start on the ground on my back, or, on my stomach or on a knee, start on the ground and just hit different muscle groups and just explore through that. Or just standing up and just hitting different dynamic exercises and just exploring and moving in different ways and just getting the body ready. From there, we'll get into like plyos, jumps, and then like sprint or speed work. And so there'll be a directional emphasis from the day, which I'll get into, but also depending on the quality, it'll be different as well. So for like a high intensity strength day for the plyos and speed, it would be like a single rep jump, with as much output as possible, or a sprint as fast as possible for a shorter distance. And then like a high volume strength day might be continuous jumps for 3 to 5 reps, still as high as possible, but now using some momentum from previous reps. And then for a sprint, could still be top speed, but maybe an even longer distance since it's higher volume. If it's a speed day, it's, being quick off the ground as fast as possible for those plyos, just really quick ground contacts. And same with like, sprints, just popping the feet off the ground as fast as possible. And then if it's like an endurance work capacity day, it would be more technique based and more like extensive, smooth. So plyos could be anywhere from 5 to 10 reps, and it's just much smoother, just like 70 to 80%, just focusing on technique, being really clean, smooth. For sprints, might be longer distances, not getting quite to top speed, but just focusing on good form, good tempo. And so different quality for each day, and then like a different direction for each day as well. So one day will be devoted to vertical jumps with linear sprints, so true sprints, so pretty standard of what you would think for plyos and jumps. And then day 2, the next lower body day, would be more lateral in nature, so lateral jumps, shuffles, crossovers, all that good stuff, more side to side. The third day would be more of like a curved sprint, and then like 45-degree plyometrics, so angles, so either 45 degrees or 135 degrees, and turning in, at an angle behind me. And then day 4 would be horizontal, so think of like broad jumps or forward bounds with an acceleration emphasis, or back pedals, or reverse runs. So with that, I'm hitting every single angle. It's kind of taken from the 8 vector system. Shout out Nick DeMarco or Jordan Newsma, but basically, not neglecting. I've hit on balance for a lot of stuff, and that applies to plyos as well. Being balanced with the ways you're jumping and sprinting, and not just going forward or vertical, but hitting every single angle. 0 degrees, 45 degrees, 90 degrees side to side, 135 degrees, and then even 180 degrees by going backwards or rotating all the way around. So having balance with plyos as well. So I'll have a directional emphasis as well as, again, those whatever that quality is for that day. And then I'll start with pogo hops, just working the lower leg, working on stiff angles, depending on, what the direction is for that day. So it could be forward, could be backward, could be lateral, whatever it is. And for these pogos and plyos, how I'll also progress it week to week is the first week would be bilateral, and then week 2, or both legs, week 2 would be either a split stance or like skips, and then week 3 would be bounds, so alternating legs, and then week 4 would be true single leg work. So just getting more and more intense and difficult with that. Just because going from 2 legs to a true single leg, think of like a forward bound or broad jump, or even like a vertical jump. Try jumping off of both legs, then try jumping off one leg. It's a lot harder to balance and to get outputs high, and so that's kind of how I like to progress those, rather than loading in like weights or reps. It's just making the movements themselves more challenging and having a good blend of both legs versus single leg work. So that's how I like to progress those. So I'll go from pogo hops to jumps, again, depending on if it's both legs or single leg for that day. So if it's a vertical sprint day, it might just be regular vertical jumps. If it's a horizontal day, it could be broad jumps or bounds. If it's a lateral day, it could be, rotational broad jumps or shuffles side to side, whatever it is. And then I'll get into like a sprint or like speed work for the day. So it could be top speed. Lateral day, it could just be shuffles, crossover runs. Then we have those curved runs, and then that acceleration day where it's shorter distances, like 10 to 15 yards, and just projecting out. So it's a nice complement to the upper body day, and instead of the elliptical, it takes about 20 minutes of doing that lower or the plyometric work. So just a nice complement. Keep it each day. Time-wise, kind of similar. So 10 minutes to warm up, 20 minutes to either elliptical or do those plyometrics, and then getting into the strength work. I'll start with Olympic movement for the day. So it'll either be, I'll alternate between a barbell and a landmine. So if it's with a barbell, it could be either a clean or snatch variation on one day, and then the other barbell day would be some sort of split jerk variation, or behind the neck jerk. And then for the landmine, it'll either also be a clean and snatch, shout out Landmine University for those movements, and the other day will be a split jerk or a rotational lateral split jerk, kind of rotating into it and turning. So that's how I like to break those up. I'll also alternate starting from either a hang position, so think of like a clean, like loading into the knee and then driving up, versus starting from a dead stop, so a clean from the floor and pulling it all the way there without any sort of reversal. So, and I'll do that for split jerk as well. It could start from either just up tall and then dipping into it like a vertical jump and then driving overhead, or it'll start just resting on a racks in a deeper squat and then driving up. So just a good blend of like the stretch shortening cycle. So think of doing a vertical jump, thinking of loading into it and using that momentum to drive up. So working on that quality, pairing that with starting from a dead stop with no momentum and generating power from a dead stop and a deeper range of motion. So like real world example, think of like a sprinter coming out of the blocks or a lineman out of his stance, being able to generate power without any momentum. So having an equal blend of each of those qualities. So that's how I like to do Olympic movements. I'll pick a variation and just roll with it for 4 weeks and then switch to something else. So for that barbell clean snatch day, I might do barbell hang clean for 4 weeks. Get as good as I can with that. I'll progress that by going to I keep it like 1 to 2 reps, and I'll work up to 90%, then 95. Then I'll work up to my max from the previous phase. And if I hit that, then that final week, I'll go for a new PR, whatever that might be. And then once I roll with that for 4 weeks, then I'll move on to a different Olympic lift. So if it's a hang clean, then I might go to a snatch from the floor. Or if it's a barbell, behind the neck split jerk from a dead stop, it might be a front rack split jerk, just a regular one with a dip into it before driving up. So again, just working on either the stretch shortening cycle with that or static strength from a dead stop and just working on power with that. And I also really like, it's also a blend of, with the barbell, it's going to be more like bilateral and not rotating at all versus the landmine more unilateral and bending and bracing. So just a nice complement and contrast. And again, helps me recover more, have more recovery time between the bilateral versus unilateral or barbell versus landmine. So that's kind of how I like to structure those. And then we'll get into a bilateral strength exercise. So either a, both legs. So a trap bar deadlift, a squat, an RDL, whatever that is. And also pairing that with a plyometric. So also bilateral. So if it's a trap bar deadlift, could be a box jump. If it's an RDL, it could be a broad jump. And I usually like to add some sort of weight to those, like a barbell, dumbbell, or use a box, just some sort of implement, rather than just going true body weight for those. And then adding some sort of single joint, lower accessory movement with that. And then the third block will be a single joint or a single leg variation unilateral. So single leg squat, single leg RDL, split squat, reverse lunge, whatever it is. And then that'll also be paired with a single leg plyometric. Again, with a similar quality. If it's a vertical movement like a squat or trap bar, maybe a vertical jump. Whereas if it's like a hinge, single leg RDL, maybe like more horizontal emphasis. So just pairing it that way. And then that final block, I'll do, again, kind of an in-between movement. So like a lateral squat or like an X lunge, or it could be like a knee extension or flexion movement where I'm really targeting the quad or the hamstring or lower hamstring and just balancing it that way without, squats are going to target the quads, but also a bunch of other muscles, whereas knee extension are truly going to be all quad, or like a single leg curl laying down. It's not going to be as much glute involvement, but really targets the hamstring. So kind of in between there. And then the rest of the workout would be like single joint movements. So hitting the hip, the different hip joint actions, flex, extend, internal, external rotation, all that good stuff. Also targeting the lower leg, so the calf muscles, plantar flexion, as well as dorsiflexion of like a tib raise, and even like inversion, eversion of the ankle as well. It's just making sure there's no chinks in the armor, once again, with the lower leg either, because that's where it starts with the foot and the lower leg and goes up the chain. So can't neglect that either. So that's kind of a lower body day. And for those primary movements, I should mention as well, those primary movements, bilateral, unilateral, multi-joint movements, I'll have a kind of a core movement that'll work in every third phase. So my primary bilateral horizontal push is a bench press. And so I'll bench press for 4 weeks, see what I can get up to throughout that 4-week phase. And then I'll do 2 phases without it. So next 4 weeks could be a weighted push-up, and then the 4 weeks after that could be like a floor press. And then I'll come back to a bench press. One, just a way to work in those movements that I really enjoy. Like I like bench pressing, I like front squatting, I like trap bar deadlift, just working those in continuously. But also it's a cool way to see those 2 phases where I'm not doing it. Did I still get stronger with a horizontal push despite not doing bench press? And is that helping my bench press despite not actually doing the bench press? And it's cool to see, you don't have to bench press every single week for your life to get good at it. You can work in other movements. You can work in, a weighted push-up. You can work in a floor press. You can work in a dead stop. You can do a close grip bench press. It's fun to not only mix it up and just work on getting good at different movements, but it's also fun to see how those other movements can not only help my bench press, but can help me get stronger in different ranges of motion, and just get strong in different ways. And so that's kind of how I like to do that. And so that could be those key movements, like bench press, overhead press, pull up, single arm dumbbell row. Lower body could be like a front squat, a barbell RDL, a single leg, landmine RDL. So kind of have a key one picked out that'll work in every third phase, just to, one, see where I'm at, and two, just because I really like those movements and just want to mix them in continuously with those other like single joint movements or the rest of the workouts. Those will just be more random. I'll just try and come up with something new or fun to do and just load it in a different way. Try and change the implement from week to week or phase to phase. So if I did if I'm doing shoulder internal rotation, maybe I use a dumbbell in this next phase. I want to try using a cable machine. And then the next phase, I might want to use a band. And then maybe I'll use my body weight for something the next phase, just experimenting that way. And if I can't think of anything else, I'll just pick an old movement that I did, 6 months to 2 years ago. Who knows? Just picking something from the library and working that in and seeing what I can do for 4 weeks before moving on to something else. So again, just keeps things fresh and exciting, and just allows you to get strong in a bunch of different ways. So that's kind of how I like to break those up. So shout out to you if you've gotten through that by now. You've probably see how much of a psychopath I am when it comes to this stuff, but it's, again, come through years and years of experimenting and just figuring out what I enjoy and seeing what works and doesn't work. And so you don't need to train like this unless you want to, but hopefully just to highlight to train on purpose. And just, if anyone came up to you and asked you during your workout, why are you doing this? Or what's the deal with this rep scheme? Or why does your movement look like that? Just being able to answer it and not being content with just going through the motions and doing something just to doing something, but being very intentional with every single thing you do, every single rep, every single day, every phase. So just makes it more enjoyable, and you can reap the rewards of that. And again, it's going to involve with what your goals are, what your life looks like, how much time you have to train, what you're aiming for, what you have energy for. So it's going to change, but just being open to that change and being open to experimenting and trying new things out. And there's been many times where I've thought, okay, this is it. This is the split. I love this. And then I change something and I like it way better. Or maybe I try something new and hate it and go back to it. So this is my current split. It could change a year from now. It could change a month from now. It could change tomorrow. Who knows? So just embracing the lifelong pursuit that is training and working out and fitness, and just thinking beyond the day-to-day, thinking in systems and specific qualities to train, thinking how you can have balance, and for me, more than anything else, how you can have joy and fun when it comes to training. So if nothing else, don't be afraid to experiment, and just have fun and just try some new things and be more intentional with your programming and approach to fitness. And maybe this is overwhelming and maybe you hate programming for yourself and don't know how to work any of this in. If you want our help, I feel like all of our SHRP programs have pieces of this. So like our athlete program has more of those like plyos and strength work, whereas like SHRP muscle is truly more like high volume strength. So each program kind of has, one or two or maybe even three of those qualities worked in. Not everything, just because not everyone's a psycho like me, but just like 4 days of training and focusing on getting good at what specific qualities are most important to you, and what goals you have. So if it's athleticism, if it's aesthetics and looking good, or if it's just mobility, if it's just simplicity and having sustainability, then any one of those programs are great to follow. If you want to train exactly like this, I also offer the SHRP Ultimate program, which is literally just the programs I do and put in there. So if you want to challenge yourself and try those out and see what that's like, then feel free to try out SHRP Ultimate. But otherwise, we have custom programming as well. If you do have specific goals or specific training split that you want to work backwards from, we can definitely go through that and set you up with something that's more tailored to what you specifically need. But yeah, just hoping that this was a glimpse. Like, if you ever see me, working out or sharing a video and you're confused, like, what the heck is this? Like, this is random. This is weird. At least there's some thought that's going into it and maybe some intention, even if it's sometimes I do something and realize, okay, this is really stupid and I'm never going to do that again. But you never know without trying it. So hopefully you can see that now. If you ever, see me working out, you maybe have a glimpse into some of the intention behind it. But just encourage you to get intentional with your own training and thinking about the purpose and philosophy behind it, and working backward from there to your phases and your days and the exercises you're doing. So be intentional and just have fun, and just read the results that comes with being intentional as well. So if you got questions on anything I mentioned, I would love to talk about this. This could have been a 3-hour podcast, but we'll leave it here for now. And yeah, if you got questions on any of these things I mentioned, just feel free to hit me up, and I'd love to help you out. But that's all we got. We'll be back at it next week. Till next time, deuces. Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed today's episode, leave a rating, review, or tell a friend to check us out. Be sure to follow us at SHRP_training for more content to help you be your best self. Go be great today.